I was watching this YouTube clip with Andrew Bustamante. If you don't know who that is, I'll link to it down below. But he was talking about how the CIA prefers to work with people who have anxiety, that anxiety is seen as a superpower. Because if you're anxious, you're going to be hyper aware. And if you're hyper aware, then you're going to know what's going on and you're not going to miss anything. In this video, I'm going to break this down why I think that this is part of being psychic or intuitive. And so we're going to talk about how that sensitivity and that empathicness can also oftentimes show up with anxiety. There can be a couple ways that you come by your sensitivity. One of the ways can be that you were a natural born healer, that you are sensitive, you're intuitive, you're empathic, you came in that way, you've always been that way, and that's your gift. And the second way can be that you had to be hypervigilant as a child. You came from perhaps a neglectful place, or maybe not even that in your childhood. Maybe it wasn't that severe, but it showed up like your parents couldn't attune to you. This happens a lot with beings that are psychic and that are aware and that are deeply sensitive and seeing because you show up so crystal clear. You show up as this beautiful being of light. And as you're growing, your parents can sense how deeply you see. When we're clairvoyant or we have abilities like these, we can see through people. It's like we're looking into the eyes of their soul. And this can be unsettling. So, if you came in that way and your parents couldn't attune to you, then you may have developed some of your gifts in childhood because you had to be hyper aware. So your anxiety, your stress level from having to read the room, always read your parents, always figure out how to people please or take care of others to keep you safe was a developed gift. Maybe you came in with some of it, maybe a lot of it was developed. I don't have all the answers, but from my own experience, I believe that both things happened. I believe that I came in with some gifts in this lifetime, but I've had to work over my life to develop them. And the way that my gifts showed up when I was younger was not like gifts. It showed up like anxiety. It showed up like being really sensitive. It showed up like people pleasing, reading the room, anticipating everybody else's needs over my own so that I could always please everyone, control the environment, and never end up in trouble or with people upset with me, right? And it came from who I am as a soul and the gifts that I cultivated in other lifetimes and brought into this life. And it also comes from the way I was raised. So, in this Andrew Bustamante interview, I found it so fascinating that the CIA considers anxiety to be a superpower because in my own life, I consider it to be that as well. So, of course, there's the downside of anxiety, right? That you feel anxious, that you might have a hard time letting go of control, that you might always feel like you have to do everything because you'll do it faster, you'll do it better. You need to kind of manage everyone. And that's also the way the culture programs us, especially if you're a woman and you're a mom. These are things that can naturally happen where you are carrying the mental load, you are in charge of a lot, and so you can end up feeling very anxious. Add into that other programs from the culture like caffeine, having coffee every morning as a very sensitive person, if you're like me, well, then you have a great recipe for that. But here's the thing that I've experienced in my life as someone who is clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient, claircognizant. I have all those clairs. So for me, the way it's shown up in my life is that anxiety, that sensitivity also looks like awareness. It looks like presence. It looks like I know what's going on around me at all times. So it's interesting. Sometimes I'll be with other people and they won't know someone's entered the room, or they won't notice something as soon as I do, or maybe they're just not tracking, right? So, as a sensitive person who has anxiety, I don't miss much. I'm not like, "Oh, out of it, spacey." I am always present and aware of my surroundings. I know what's going on. I know when an energy has entered the space. That's part of being attuned and being psychic, but it's also part of that hyper awareness that I think the CIA is talking about. You are going to walk into a room and notice everything. You're going to walk into a room and feel everything. And that can be a blessing and a curse, right? It's also part of being very introverted. So I need to go home after I'm out with people and I need to rest. I need to relax. It's so funny. Just yesterday, my daughter was like, Mom, I'm not like you. I can go out all day, be around people, and be fine. She knows with me, if we go out and we do an activity, I'm going home, I'm putting on my pajamas, I'm telling her I need quiet time, I'm shutting the windows and the curtains, I'm laying down, I might put on my eye mask. And for 20 minutes, I'm going to be out. I need to rejuvenate. I need to rest. So I think it's very interesting that he came forth with this information. It resonates with me. If it resonates with you, let me know. Leave a comment down below. I think it's such an interesting discourse we're having now in the larger culture. It's like what I've always talked about as being psychic and intuitive and aware, these attributes of divine feminine intuition, of our gut feelings, these attributes are being talked about a little bit more in the space, in public discourse, in terms of words and language like anxiety, neurodiversity, ADHD, because a lot of women who have anxiety and who are really sensitive and who have been hypervigilant also have these other attributes. I'm Generation X. We're talked about as the lost generation. A lot of people in our generation were diagnosed with ADHD, but it was mostly boys because women, our hyperactivity is more in our head. So we were overlooked. People didn't see us. So now we are showing up as more neurodiverse in the spaces and places that we show up in. And for me, neurodiversity is also a way to bridge into talking about psychic and intuitive because our brains are different than other people's as well. If you are psychic, if you are clairvoyant, if you are seeing things that other people are not seeing, you are neurodiverse. It might not be in the exact same way that like the scientific community or the mental health community might want to talk about it, but to me, they bleed into one another. They're very similar. So I think it's an interesting conversation that's happening right now, which is about women and it's about our brains and our needs and women specifically who are not neurotypical, who do see things differently, recognize patterns, potentially have anxiety because the thing that most women were diagnosed with who were overlooked when they were younger with ADHD, they've ended up being diagnosed with anxiety and depression. Because if you don't know that you're neurodiverse and you have ADHD and your brain works differently and you're not fitting in the way everyone expects you to fit in a neurotypical population or space, then you're gonna become anxious and depressed because you're not sure why you're so different. So I've often talked to the women and the people that are my ideal clients as not normals. Like, have you never fit in? That is a symptom of being intuitive and psychic. That is a symptom of being ADHD and neurodiverse. So here we are we're realizing, oh, I've only ever been diagnosed with anxiety. And the reason I have that is because I'm so different and I've never been understood and I've often been overlooked. But now you know that your anxiety is a superpower and that the CIA would prefer to have people who are more anxious than not because you're going to be aware of what's going on. So, however you come by it honestly, and let's shift it into being a superpower. All right. See you on the flip side.